They didn't expect him to refuse. When most African leaders are summoned, they comply, some willingly, others reluctantly. But NATO had never dealt with a man like Ibrahim Traoré. This time they did not send soldiers nor sanctions. They tried something more subtle, polite pressure wrapped in diplomacy. Mark Rutte, newly appointed as the Secretary General of NATO, landed in Ouagadougou with a carefully staged mission. Cameras followed. Suits surrounded him. His posture said confident Western authority. He expected the usual protocol: red carpets, military salutes, and a decorated reception. Instead, he was greeted with silence. No parades, no ceremonial orchestra, no staged handshake performances. Rutte was escorted, not to a grand palace but to a plain, undecorated military room, walls bare, chairs simple, atmosphere intentional. There sat Captain Ibrahim Traoré, calm, unshaken, unmoved by rank or reputation. Rutte opened with diplomacy, or at least what NATO calls diplomacy. "We come in the spirit of cooperation," he said. "NATO is ready to support Burkina Faso, to help restore stability, to reopen channels of partnership, especially with France." The message behind the words was clear: let us back in. But Traoré's silence spoke louder than any speech. He didn't respond immediately. He simply listened, not as a subordinate, but as a judge listening to an old empire plead its case. Then, without raising his voice, he delivered a sentence that froze the room. "There was order before you came. There will be order after you leave." In that moment, the power dynamic flipped. This was no routine visit. This was not diplomacy. This was NATO asking for relevance and being denied. Western officials shifted uneasily. Their expressions tightened. Cameras were not allowed in. But if they had been, the world would have seen the look of men realizing their era of authority was slipping. The NATO delegation quickly realized that polite language would not work. Their tone shifted. This was no longer diplomacy. This was desperation. Mark Rutte leaned forward, trying to regain control of the room. "President Traoré," he insisted, "Europe is concerned. Terrorism in the Sahel is spreading. Without collaboration, your region risks becoming isolated." There it was. Not a warning, a threat. Western leaders have mastered the art of soft intimidation. They use words like stability, cooperation, global responsibility, but their meaning is always the same. Accept our terms, or face consequences. But Traoré didn't blink. He didn't negotiate. He laid out the bill of history. He responded slowly, not to argue but to educate. "When our villages were attacked, you watched. When our children starved, you sent debt. When we asked for tractors, you sent soldiers. When we demanded respect, you offered lectures." The entire mission from Brussels shattered in 4 lines. The NATO officials exchanged nervous glances. Their strategy was failing. The tension in the room was no longer hidden. NATO had entered expecting compliance. Instead, they were being lectured by the very leader they believed they could control. Realizing their diplomatic language had failed, the delegation changed tactics. One of Rutte's aides leaned in and spoke sharply, dropping all pretense. "If Burkina Faso refuses cooperation, Europe may be forced to reconsider trade agreements, arms access, currency flow. You understand the consequences. In translation, obey us, or we will cripple you." This was the moment most African leaders in history had folded. Threats wrapped in economics, sanctions disguised as policy. The old colonial playbook. But Traoré wasn't just another African head of state. He wasn't raised in palaces or trained to smile for donors. He came from the barracks, from the same soil as his people, from a history of betrayal that still burns in African memory. He did not flinch. He did not respond with fear. He responded with finality. "Let me be clear. Burkina Faso is not for sale. We are not your protectorate. We are not your experiment. We are not children asking for permission. You came to offer conditions. I give you ours." Rutte straightened, waiting. Traoré delivered it like a military order. "NATO forces will not enter Burkina Faso land, directly or indirectly. No French base, no European mission, no security partnerships in disguise. From this day, Burkina Faso will defend itself, with allies who do not come to steal." It was not a request. It was expulsion. The NATO officials tried to maintain composure, but the truth was undeniable. They were not leaving after talks. They were being dismissed. No agreement signed, no handshake for the cameras, no joint statement of mutual cooperation. Only one reality remained. NATO had been rejected completely and unapologetically by a nation they once ruled. By the time the NATO convoy left Ouagadougou's military compound, the news had already leaked. Not officially, not through press statements, but through whispers, from soldiers who witnessed it, from advisors who couldn't keep their composure, from the stunned expressions of Western officials who walked out without a victory handshake. Within hours, European intelligence networks confirmed it internally. Traore has rejected NATO's proposal entirely. No cooperation, no compromise. At first, Western media tried to downplay it. They released carefully worded headlines. Talks with Burkina Faso remain ongoing. NATO expresses concern over security alignment. Dialogue continues regarding Sahel coordination. But truth doesn't stay hidden in the digital age. African independent journalists published full accounts of the meeting. Leaked quotes spread across Twitter, Telegram, and Pan-African forums like wildfire. We will not trade dignity for protection. If this is partnership, Africa needs freedom, not friends. NATO will not set foot on Burkina Faso soil. The silence in Western institutions didn't last long. Once the news of NATO's failure could no longer be hidden, the reaction shifted from denial to panic. Television panels across Europe and America lit up with alarmed analysts. While the West scrambled, Traoré did not retreat to silence. He addressed his nation, not behind glass podiums or with polished scripts, but on open ground, surrounded by his people. His speech was recorded on phones, broadcast through rumbling crowds, translated within hours across Africa and beyond. His words rang like gunfire. They came to offer partnership? No. They came to reclaim ownership. They believed Africa would kneel. Not anymore. Burkina Faso will walk alone if it must. But we will never walk behind. The crowd erupted. He wasn't finished. Let the world hear clearly. We are not intimidated by sanctions. We are not threatened by isolation. We would rather be poor with dignity than rich with chains. Those words echoed far beyond Burkina Faso. They became a declaration for every nation still haunted by colonial shadows. In Mali, crowds marched with Burkina Faso flags. In Niger, soldiers played Traoré's speech through military speakers. In Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, youth started online campaigns. No more Western masters. Even diaspora communities in Europe and America wrote one powerful line. For the first time in our lives, an African leader is saying what we've always wanted to say. And saying it to their face. History is not written by those who stayed silent. It is written by those who stood when others bowed. One day, documentaries will speak of this moment. They will not say, NATO visited Burkina Faso. They will say, NATO came to reclaim Africa, and Burkina Faso sent them back empty-handed. And at the center of that moment was one man, not a king, not an emperor, not a puppet, a soldier, a captain, a flame, Ibrahim Traoré. And whether the West likes it or not, Africa has entered a new era, not of negotiation, but of power.